President John F. Kennedy served our nation in a time of intense turmoil and confusion. His presidency marked the height of the Cold War, the beginning of tensions in Vietnam, the start of a war on organized crime, and the middle of the Civil Rights Movement. With so much going on involving both foreign and domestic policies, Kennedy became both a hero and a villain to people all across the globe. Many people could have had a motive to kill President Kennedy, but to this day we still ask the major questions: who and why? President Kennedy was assassinated Friday, November 22, 1963, at 12:30 p.m. in Dealey Plaza in Dallas while riding in a motorcade with the First Lady. The president was struck twice, and the bullets were said to have come from the 6th floor window of the Texas School Book Depository. At 1 p.m., Kennedy was pronounced dead in Parkland Hospital, and Lyndon B. Johnson was sworn into office. After the event, the country was left in utter disbelief, wondering who could have done it. The blame immediately fell on Lee Harvey Oswald, an arrogant but lonely former Marine and Marxist. However, lots of evidence has surfaced, leading us to believe Oswald may not have worked alone or even been part of the assassination at all. The famous Altgens photograph reveals what conspirators tried to hide. Oswald, or a man quite similar looking, is pictured in the doorway of the Texas School Book Depository at the time of the assassination. Witnesses have argued that the man in the 6th floor window was not even wearing the same color shirt as Oswald on that day. Other evidence has claimed that it was not Oswald's palm print on the rifle, and that he was not responsible for killing Tippit, the police officer on the parade street that was linked to Kennedy's death. Many pieces of the puzzle were left wrapped in mystery when nightclub owner Jack Ruby murdered Oswald 2 days later. Despite being one of America's most well-known presidents, Kennedy had many enemies. A number of people and organizations could have been behind his murder. First, we could speculate that the Republicans would have wanted Kennedy dead after he stole away the election from Richard Nixon. Kennedy was also criticized by most right-wingers for watching the Soviets build up the Berlin Wall and for agreeing to a limited nuclear test ban treaty with them. They also disliked his idea to withdraw troops from the Vietnam War. They believed he was permitting the spread of communism. Most of his opposition emerged, however, after the Bay of Pigs crisis. Kennedy sent troops to invade Cuba in April 1961. They were captured and made prisoners soon after landing. This enraged those in the mafia who wanted their Cuban casinos back. Also, this infuriated the CIA agents when Kennedy blamed them for underestimating the Cubans. 1 week after Kennedy's murder, President Johnson established the Warren Commission to explore the assassination. Its findings, confirming Oswald as the killer, were thought to be an extreme government cover-up. Thus, the gates opened for multiple conspiracy theories. There are entirely too many to cover all of them, but the more notable theories still remain in question today.
One of the more popular conspiracy theories surrounding the JFK assassination is that the Mafia was involved in the killing. Many people believe that the Mafia had very strong motives to kill the president. The Kennedy administration was threatening the existence of organized crime. JFK's brother, Robert Kennedy, was actively trying to stomp out the Mafia and its leaders through his position in the Justice Department, and JFK was backing him up. Members of the Mafia were also upset because they believed the president was being a hypocrite. Joseph Kennedy, the father of JFK and RFK, had a history of involvement with organized crime figures, and there had been much support for JFK's campaign from racketeers. JFK had also used mob members in dealing with Castro and the situation in Cuba. Obviously, the Mafia would not have wanted their way of life to be compromised, and they were angry at the hypocrisy they saw. So in response, it is believed that they assassinated JFK. Prior to the assassination, various Mafia members were rumored to have been threatening the president's life. Rose Cherami, who was friendly with Mafia members, said prior to the assassination that it was common knowledge in the underworld that the president was going to be assassinated. The House Assassination Committee stated that there is solid evidence that Hoffa, Marcello, and Trafficante, 3 of the most important targets for criminal prosecution by the Kennedy administration, had discussions with their subordinates about murdering President Kennedy. It was no secret that these men and many others involved in organized crime wanted the president out of the picture. The Mafia obviously had the motive and the means to assassinate JFK, but how was it carried out? Carlos Marcello, a New Orleans mob boss, is alleged to have organized the assassination of JFK with the assistance of Jimmy Hoffa, Santo Trafficante. Marcello was quoted saying, A dog will continue to bite you if you cut off its tail, whereas if you cut off the dog's head, it would cease to cause trouble. This was a metaphor for JFK and Robert Kennedy, Robert being the tail and JFK being the head. According to this quote, Marcello believed it would be more effective to kill the president rather than his brother, whose position was subordinate to the president. Marcello was clearly plotting to kill the president, but he needed to keep his hands clean. If word got out that the Mafia had organized the assassination of the president, there would be even more reason to put an end to their business, and the initiatives coming from RFK would only get harsher. Therefore, Marcello had to set up some nut to take the fall for the job, just like they do in Sicily. This is where Lee Harvey Oswald comes into play. Oswald did have some psychiatric issues and was therefore the perfect candidate to hire to kill the president. He would take the blame for the assassination, and the mob bosses would get off scot-free as long as no one talked. In order to make sure their plot was kept secret, the Mafia hired Jack Ruby to kill Oswald as he was being transferred from police headquarters to the county jail. Those who believe in the Mafia conspiracy make a very convincing argument for their point of view. They have done much research and have facts to back up their accusations. Unfortunately, many of these facts are also used in other conspiracy theories to argue different points of view.
In 2007, E. Howard Hunt, the country's most notorious CIA spook, who later served time for his role in Watergate, gave a near-deathbed confession to his long-estranged son, naming then Vice President Lyndon B. Johnson and a handful of CIA spooks as the group behind the assassination of John F. Kennedy. Hunt created a cassette tape that he later mailed to his son, narrating his knowledge of the CIA's involvement. In the tapes, Hunt describes himself as a bench warmer, but one who was willing to play a larger role. Hunt alleges on the tape that then Vice President Lyndon B. Johnson was involved in the planning of the assassination and in the cover-up, stating that Johnson had an almost maniacal urge to become president. He regarded JFK as an obstacle to achieving that. In addition to the tape, Rolling Stone published a story shortly after Hunt's death in which Hunt also put paper to pen in front of his son to tell his secret story of the JFK assassination. In the story, Hunt first scribbled the initials LBJ, standing for Kennedy's ambitious vice president, Lyndon Johnson. Under LBJ, connected by a line, he wrote the name Cord Meyer. Meyer was a CIA agent whose wife had an affair with JFK. Later, she was murdered, a case that's never been solved. Next, his father connected to Meyer's name the name Bill Harvey, another CIA agent. Also connected to Meyer's name was the name David Morales, yet another CIA man and a well-known, particularly vicious black ops specialist. Then his father connected to Morales' name with a line, the framed words, French gunman, grassy knoll. But how could our own government assassinate the president? Hunt's confessions of Johnson's and the CIA's involvement should be shocking. However, the CIA conspiracy has consistently remained one of the forefront conspiracies of the JFK assassination. So the question then turns from how to why. What were their motives for assassinating JFK? One reason involves the United States' involvement in Cuba. At first, President Kennedy entered office as an advocate of a stronger line against Fidel Castro's Cuba, and was a fan of the counterinsurgent warfare employed by the CIA. However, this changed with the ill-fated Bay of Pigs invasion of Cuba. Shortly after the failed invasion, which Kennedy claimed to have inadequate information of, Kennedy told his friend Clark Clifford, a government lawyer, "Something very bad is going on within the CIA, and I want to know what it is. I want to shred the CIA into 1,000 pieces and scatter them to the four winds." Kennedy accepted responsibility publicly, but privately blamed the CIA and asked for the resignation of longtime director Allen Dulles and many others. Many CIA officers blamed Kennedy for failing to support the operation, in particular for his canceling of a planned second set of airstrikes. Author James Douglas, who wrote JFK and the Unspeakable, Why He Died and Why It Matters, as well as many others, claimed that another reason for Kennedy's assassination was because he was turning away from the Cold War and seeking a negotiated peace with the Soviet Union and its leader, Nikita Khrushchev. Horrified by the threat of nuclear annihilation, Kennedy gradually turned towards a policy of lasting peace. But to the military and intelligence agencies in the United States, who were committed to winning the Cold War at any cost, Kennedy's change of heart was a direct threat to their power and influence. Despite Hunt's confessions and the obvious strain between the CIA and Kennedy, the official records still contest that Oswald acted as a lone gunman, with no involvement by any other party, let alone our very own government. To believe otherwise is to tumble into ontological uncertainty, so deep and dark as to make us never believe another government press release again.
After the assassination of President Kennedy, America was sent into a frenzy of questions regarding the young president's sudden death. Multiple reports and stories were published questioning why Lee Harvey Oswald killed the president and if there were others that were involved in this manslaughter. Vice President Johnson was sworn in as President of the United States within the day of the assassination while the President Kennedy's body lay in a coffin in the next room of Air Force One. The next few weeks were trying times for Americans because most did not understand what had happened and why. President Kennedy's autopsies were released and many of them contradicted each other. This only led to more questions by the American people. Although many agree that President Kennedy's election to the presidency was surprising because of his Irish Catholic roots and womanizing personality, everyone agrees that his assassination is one of America's greatest tragedies. Although during our lifetimes we have never experienced the assassination of our president, we have experienced an event that will never be forgotten, with the attack on the World Trade Center on September 11, 2001. This is comparable to the assassination of President Kennedy because it is an event that shook America. The legacy of the Kennedy family, who are considered to be American royalty, is sad and has a dark storyline. Bobby Kennedy ran for president 8 years after his brother's death and was assassinated during the campaign in a hotel in California. That left Edward, one of the youngest Kennedy brothers, to carry on the Kennedy name in Washington. He served 40-plus years in the Senate and had an unsuccessful presidential election when he tried to run against incumbent Jimmy Carter, who was also a Democrat. Jackie Kennedy then had a controversial marriage to much older Aristotle Onassis, a Greek shipping magnate, because she feared the safety of her children after Bobby's assassination. She is quoted saying, "If they are killing Kennedys, then my children are targets." The family left America for Greece once the marriage took place. A Kennedy had presided in Congress from 1947 until 2011, and the family will return to Washington in January when Joseph P. Kennedy III takes office as the representative of Massachusetts' 4th District. The Kennedy legacy still lives on today in the lives of many living and breathing Kennedys, whom all hold the same principle that the older generations before them did: to help America. For a family that has been through such tragedy and national spotlight, it is truly inspiring that they have come out on such a moral high ground.